This is the Avocado Project. Australia has started to become a big brother watching over your shoulder while you browse the internet. The government implemented the 16-year minimum age limit for social media moderation in December 2025, and now adults are starting to have their privacy under surveillance as age verification for certain websites, apps, and video games has creeped in. Axel, did you know that Australia was the first country to implement a comprehensive ban on social media for children under 16?
I actually didn't know that. I thought it was already in place in the UK. I thought the UK did it first.
I thought so too. But when I was looking at it today, I was like, oh my God, I had no idea. I know that the UK has got similar stuff to Australia, and so does US, but
Yeah.
we were ballsy enough to bring in the ban for under 16.
Wow, okay. Yay, go Australia, I guess.
Go Australia. What are your thoughts? What do you think about this?
Well, the social media ban,
Yes.
I think it's needed. In principle, I support it. I think social media, well, apps such as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, pretty addictive. You know, not just for adults, but for children.
Right.
And it keeps them hooked, doom scrolling hours on end. It can actually present harm as well. Could access it, or it could expose them to material that they shouldn't actually be seeing, right?
You're talking about like really harmful content.
Harmful content, that's right.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Like pornography, content that encourages, promotes, or provides instructions for self-harm, eating disorders, or even suicide. There's an opening for bullying as well online with
Yeah, of
trolls,
course.
and there's a variable access to things that can depict or encourage violence or injury or dangerous challenges or stunts or stuff like that. And also, you know, there are predatory actors online as well that can target kids. I do agree with a social media ban for under 16s, but I also know that kids aren't stupid. You know, there are
Of course not.
workarounds. There are workarounds with a ban like this. I think, you know, there's an uptick in VPN usage to get around participating in the process of verifying your age, or displaying pictures of your parents or your dog
Yeah,
to
true.
try and bypass it.
I'm okay with the social media ban under 16, I guess to a certain extent. I know it's good because if you've got kids that, you know, for instance, let's say 8 to 10, you know, it's going to kind of protect the kids during that key brain development. By the way, I'm not a doctor, but when you're a kid, you want to be a kid. You want to go around, you want to climb a tree, you want to, I don't know, fall over, hurt your knee, ride a bike, all that sort of stuff. Pulling them away from that, you know, that constant scrolling and looking at different content, you're staying away from media influence that can, like you said, put you in a state where you are there to be bullied, or you have a bad image of yourself and you get to kind of experience your life and grow up. And then when you are ready, you can finally go into social media. The one thing I am worried about, and I think there is a little bit of bad to this ban, like you said, the kids aren't dumb. They're going to bypass it. There was already, and I think I remember reading this article on The Times, 61% of Aussie kids are still using social media despite the ban. You know, it's 2/3 of teens are active via the workarounds. You know, they're using parents' accounts, they're using VPNs, they're using fake ages. This could push kids to less regulated, darker parts of the internet, and it doesn't fix the real issue. Harmful content still exists. You're delaying it until they turn 16, you know?
Well, that's right. I mean, why is 17 not part of it?
Well, yeah, that's it. Yeah. And the thing is, you're isolating them from, these niche communities, especially for kids who might be of a different orientation. How are you supposed to kind of branch out and find a community that you're able to talk to and, maybe make new friends, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, because also online, I guess the online space, lots of people actually use it to connect with other people. A lot of people actually befriend the perfect stranger. Now, I guess that could
Yeah.
be a problem, but that's where all the interaction happens. It happens through apps. Now, these companies, these big tech companies, notably from the US, know that their apps are designed to keep people using them.
That's
So
right.
there is also that as well. The question you put to me was, what do I think of it? I think it has actually now, I guess you could say it has evolved to more than just a social media ban, because we have
Right.
age verification laws
Mm.
in Australia.
I know this got brought in just really recent. It was in March that they brought this out. I'm not for this. I don't like this at all. I know why the government is pushing it. They're using the words like it's stopping minors from accessing, porn sites, gambling, and extreme content. The only problem, and probably the main issue here, is it requires your ID. This is through your facial scans or personal data. They're asking you for either your driver's license or your passport, or you can do a birth
Yeah.
certificate. It's frustrating because it's creating a centralized identity system for the internet when the internet was never supposed to be this. It was supposed to be, well, always has been the Wild West. And now I feel like I need to show my identity in order to browse sites that I've been going on since I was a kid.
Yeah, and there's massive privacy and security risks with uploading government issued IDs like your driver's license, your passport,
Yeah.
your birth certificate, biometric data like scanning your face. You're
Mm-hmm.
trusting these third party verification companies with your information in hopes that there won't be a data breach. What are their privacy policies? This age verification law that we have in Australia, they can't moderate these third party companies. It's at the discretion of the individual to do their research, to actually, if they want to continue using a service, an app, or a website, they have to review the companies that develop these apps
Right.
every single time before giving their own information that would identify them, linking them to their browsing activity. So it is definitely a risk.
They're building a system that can't even tell if you're 16, but they're using it to control the internet. You're putting in these age checks for your porn sites, your R-rated games, AI chatbots as well. And your Google and your Microsoft are required to implement age assurance or face. That was brought in not too long ago as well. That was from December 27th, I believe. The problem is, as soon as you upload your identity, that's it. They've got you.
That's
You know,
it.
there's
That's it.
I can understand if you're, for instance, you're like a Medicare or a Medibank or, a Telstra and Optus. I can understand having your identity for that because it is a service that you're a part of. You are using that service. But when I'm going on the internet, something that I can access on my phone or my PC or, I don't know, from a console, I shouldn't have to constantly have someone over my shoulder and just like tapping me there and saying, hey, I know you want to use this website, but can you just show me a picture of your face? And by the way, tell me your whole name and date of birth. That would be great. I don't like that.
Yeah, and the problem with this is that the government has no part. They don't have any participation in the verification process. It's the companies. The companies
That's
that
it.
have to enforce our laws, and we have to trust them with our information. So it does actually pose a security risk. And this eventually people will find or try to circumvent these age verification checks by using stuff like VPNs or by just not accessing the service or app at all. Certainly, the world could potentially be turning into a more surveillance state. It's certainly looking that way.
I want to go back to the third parties that do this sort of stuff. You and I were only talking about this not too long ago, And we spoke about Discord, we spoke about Optus, we spoke about Medibank, and the data breaches that released
Yep.
a lot of people's information. How do you think this could be fixed when it comes to third party verification? How do you think we can get around this?
You get around it by not using the service. I mean,
no,
that's the thing. I actually personally was affected by one of the data breaches. So
Oh, okay.
there was a Qantas data breach sometime last year. I think late last year in 2025. And I think people who were flying during the COVID years, I was part of that lot that had scheduled flights that obviously didn't happen during COVID because of border closures and whatnot. I was made aware via email that my information was exposed, and exposed in a data breach that's probably on the dark web somewhere. So it probably surprisingly, it was a domestic flight. So I don't think I had my passport attached to that. But I think I
Right.
did have maybe my driver's license. I'm not sure. It was 5 years ago, so I'm not sure. However, it's on the dark web. People have information to you, details about your full name, your date of birth, and obviously your gender and your ID. I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
you need to
right.
have a government issued ID to book a flight. That kind of surprised me. I don't think I got compensation for that. The internet, for the most part, has been unregulated. And is this an attempt by governments of many countries trying to create some form of censorship? Or are they really trying to protect certain demographics of the populace? Or are they just trying to serve more control over their own nations? I don't know. That's all up in the air.
I think definitely having their having their eyes watching over your shoulder when you do this sort of stuff. I think that is maybe a little bit to it. And when we're going back to how can we kind of change this, I don't know if you remember this, and this is going back. I think it would have been about 5 years ago, because we're talking about public pressure. If you have the public pressuring the government for these laws, it can be changed. Well, probably not so much changed, probably more so modified. And 5 years ago, Apple had that CSAM scanning backlash. So 2021, Apple planned to scan users' photos for child abuse material. And
Yep.
there was an insane amount of backlash from security researchers, privacy experts, and it was the people who obviously use it. And
Mhm.
there was a heap of complaints, there was a heap of letters. There were over 90 civil liberty groups opposed to it, and Apple delayed it. And then a year later, saying nothing, they completely scrapped it. So
Yeah.
it could be applied to Australia's laws for age verification. I know some people will go, I like this, it keeps everyone in check, but I worry about what it's going to be like in the future. And it's kind of hard to push back on something like this when you have a population, let's say in rural areas that don't use the internet or don't know how to turn on a computer. You have all these young kids that are doing it, and I don't know. It's frustrating. It really is frustrating because I never thought in my life that I would see something like this happen. I always thought, well, I'm not saying the internet is safe to browse on everything, but I thought I would be able to do it, without having to put out my driver's license or
Yeah.
my passport, right? I know I'm rambling at the moment. It's just like a huge slap in the face. Never thought this would happen in a million years. I understand the social media ban for the kids, but
Mhm.
I didn't expect the government saying to the adults, "Hey, I know you want to use this website, but I need your identity or just a photo of your face." I never thought that they would ever do something like this. I'm an adult. I shouldn't have to get permission from, a big brother, so I can go on a forum site or, you know, browse certain content, you know?
Yeah. I mean, this doesn't just apply to like websites, but it applies to like dating apps and like you said earlier, applies to all these things that you would use on a daily basis. It applies to
Mm.
that. And like I said earlier, the government has no control over how company enforces our laws. So they may
Mhm.
actually pick a third party provider that verifies identification, but they
Mhm.
could have flawed privacy policies. They could sell your data, they could sell your information. We don't know what they can do. So it's just, there's so many checks and balances that go unchecked. And it really comes down to the individual to do their due diligence and research on
Of
every
course.
company and third party verifier to make sure that their information doesn't get into the hands of a bad state actor, you know?
So instead of protection, it's control. And that's the
Yeah.
way I'm really seeing it. I'm not saying that it's for everything. Like I said, I can agree to certain points with the under 16, but when you turn 18, you're an adult, you're able to make decisions for yourself.
Yeah, so not only is it a concern for data breaches, it also opens up the web of identity fraud, potential identity fraud, personal privacy, surveilling our online activity, our personal
Mm.
purchases, because you're linking your name, you're linking your actual identity to what you're doing online. Like I understand that the social media ban for under 16s is essentially to prevent harm and exposure, right?
Right.
But the age verification laws for adults, that's a different story. It certainly is a different story. I feel like it does pose a security threat,
Hmm.
and the government is essentially saying, okay, you got to verify your age to use certain apps, to use certain sites and games,
Hmm.
but we have no say.
My biggest question is, how do you think the internet is going to look in the future? Because for me, I think it's going to be identity linked internet, and we spoke about this a while ago as well. More platforms, and not even platforms, but well, I guess you could say apps as well. Your platforms, you can have the age verification, their ID checks, whether it be direct or indirect. Privacy is going to become a bit of a luxury. The default internet's going to be tracked, it's going to be verified and moderated. And I mean, we already have these sort of things. And I feel like since we've got the third parties that are in to verify your identity, I feel like it's going to have more of an AI controlled content feed. So the algorithm is going to control what you see. It's going to curate your entire experience. They're going to know what you like and dislike. It's going to be crazy. That's what I think it's going to be.
Interesting that you mentioned AI because
Hmm.
we don't really have any AI regulation in Australia, let alone, I don't even think the US has any at the moment. So if AI is going to be playing a part to verifying age, I think, isn't that what they're using? Using AI to determine
Yes.
biometric data on how old you are?
Well, yeah, they had a person that I think it was a video of someone for a Discord check. They just drew a face on their thumb, and they were able to get
Oh,
past the verification check just by like
see,
turning the thumb left to right.
there you go. So, yeah, these age verification laws, hand in hand with the social media under 16 ban in Australia, it's actually, yeah, it is impacting the general population. I think we are having to make decisions of linking our ID to our activity online. So, is that a privacy risk? Is it government overreach?
The Wild West internet is basically over. The future of the internet is structured and it's filtered and it's verified. But I mean, you do have the underground version, which will always exist. But it's I'm not going to say the free internet is disappearing. It's kind of splitting into two. You know, you've got one side that is safe, and then you've got one side that's controlled. And I think the future is going to be kind of the same as it is now. It might have a bit more moderation filtered in into certain websites, apps, games. You know, it's just how the world is really really going to be.
Yeah.
You know, the internet used to be built on anonymity, but now it's slowly being tied to identity. And I kind of find that a little bit funny. You know, you go on the internet to be anonymous, and now, you know, you can't anymore. We're trying to fix a human problem with a technical solution. It's probably the best way to put it.
Exactly. I think the social media under 16 ban in Australia, I think that does assist parents in a great
Of
way
course.
to get them out, to not to stop them from using apps, to get them out of the house, to not be hooked on their phones. But it only protects them to a point, because parents can use parental tools, right? Parental controls for iPads, phones, and whatnot, so they can track essentially what their kids are doing. But having these laws kind of parents the kids. The government's trying to be the parent for everyone's
Right.
kids instead of the parents doing their job. Typically, the parent of kids should be educating them on the risks online and the nature of the internet. And government shouldn't have that much overreach when it comes to this.
You know, this is coming from someone who's childless. Please let your kids go outside a little bit more. Just tell them to get off their phone. You know, I know kids are going to find workarounds to get on this sort of stuff. I know I did it when I was a kid, but having the 16 and under ban for certain platforms, I think is good. But just also realize that kids are going to find workarounds. And I don't know, I feel like, do you tell the parents to kind of crack down on your kids? You know, I never really had this issue growing up because I wasn't in deep with a lot of media influence. You know, I played
Right.
games with mates, and I know I was on Facebook when you could poke people. Obviously, it's different now.
But you know what's also interesting about this social media under 16 ban
Mm.
is, okay, this is stopping kids from using apps and social media outside of school hours. So what are they doing in schools to stop kids from using their phones?
I know certain schools had, you know, their internet under lock and key, but I know back when, you know, when I had my laptop at my high school, we didn't have everything blocked, and maybe that was the fault of the system at my school. But I know I could access certain websites without, you know, without getting blocked by the school internet. And not only that, but we were allowed to take these laptops home. And, you know, if you've got, you know, back then it was broadband, but if you've got your internet now, you could just look up anything on your school laptop. They didn't check it, they didn't monitor it. It was just there for, you take it to school, you type out all your work, you take it home. You know, I was playing video games on my laptop. I was accessing sites as I was a curious young man growing up. So what's to say this, you know, can't be the same thing with kids nowadays, right? Yeah, I can
That's
understand the and we've talked about it multiple times. It's the ban, but is it really going to protect kids when you have all these other workarounds? Is this becoming protection, or is this, you know, becoming something bigger? Because we had the kids first, and now we've got the adults. You know, what's to say
That's
that
right.
it's going to be the whole population? I don't want to get on my
That's
tinfoil hat here, but it's just odd that this comes in December and then bam, something comes in March. Like, it was very, very quick too. Came in very
and
quick.
it was approved. Yeah.
Yeah.
and
Well, you got the EU and the UK rolling this out as well. I find it interesting.
It is very intriguing. I agree. I think, is the government actually trying to protect their general population, or are they trying to have control? Now that I think about it, actually, Are they trying to get, but these billionaires that own social media platforms, they know a lot about people already
Right.
that the government do not know. So is this trying to compete for the information of who has control over their people? I don't know if there's a tussle between, big tech companies because they have access to a lot of information about habits, about algorithms, about what people like and dislike.
That's right. Yeah.
Compared to the government don't know this type of information. So are they trying to compete against each other? Is the government trying to get control back from these social media platforms? I don't know.
You can't childproof the internet, but
No.
you can over control it, which is what's happening at the moment. We're trading long-term privacy for short-term peace of mind. And the good intentions that the government think they're doing don't always lead to the good outcomes. Once you normalize the ID checks online, there's no going back from this. You can't just instantly flip this because there's going to be public outcry for the people who've already done this. So, if this becomes normal, what's the next thing we'll need ID for?
Well, I think it's something to be cautious of because, again, it's your privacy. Everyone's entitled to their own privacy. Uploading information, government-issued IDs, biometric data to companies and trusting them with your information, that is a big risk. That's a data security problem as well.
The question I have for the viewers at home, at what point does protecting people turn into controlling them? Do we actually trust governments and third parties with our identity online? Let us know your thoughts, guys, and we will see you all in the next one.
Bye.